Defence Review on the 16th of July 2024. It's expected to report in the first half of 2025, and that's an important date to note. The SDR it has been described as a root and branch review of the whole of the UK defence enterprise, pointing the way to a new era for defence. But can a different approach being taken this time around produce significantly better results than the other recent reviews? And the worst one in history was SDSR 2010, under the leadership of the Defence Minister, I think his name was Fox. It was hopeless, and it decimated our armed forces. We are this time very lucky that the SDR is being led by my noble friend, Lord Robertson, who was chair of Ditchley, where I was a governor, and General Sir Richard Barrons. We were fellow commissioners at the Royal Hospital, Chelsea, together. With the ongoing war in Europe, the conflicts in the Middle East, global, regional instability, this is all about the values and interests of the United Kingdom. Threats posed by terrorist groups, hybrid warfare, instability intensifies by climate change, the UK's defence structure, recruitment, training, modernisation of the defence systems, and this trajectory to reach 2.5% of GDP. My Lords, in 2019, 70th anniversary of NATO, in that debate 5 years ago, I said that we should be spending 3% of GDP on defence, and I've been like a stuck record ever since. The MOD faces funding challenges. Our budget today is £54.2 billion for defence, and I will come back to that. And of course, we know the inefficiencies in our MOD's procurement processes, evidenced by the delays in programmes such as Ajax and the Type 26. This will undermine our capability to respond to emerging and unexpected threats. And, my Lords, we're meant to be investing more in innovative technologies such as AI and cyber, and maintaining its competitive edge, and we're also meant to prioritise effective recruitment. Please, please, Lord Robertson, make sure that this review gets rid of outsourcing recruitment. How can we outsource the esprit de corps of the finest armed forces in the world to recruiters who are not part of the defence forces themselves? That is a stupid, stupid idea. We've got to stop it right now. Our commitment to the UK's nuclear deterrence, reinforcing NATO as the foundation of the UK's defence strategy, and of course this comprehensive approach to modernisation. And the terms of reference, clear parameters: commitment to the UK nuclear deterrent, NATO-first approach, reinforcing homeland security, continuing support for Ukraine, maintaining defence ties with the Indo-Pacific region and the Gulf and the Middle East, and delivering AUKUS. But, my Lords, RUSI has said the scale and immediacy of the threats and risks to UK national security grows. We will need to consider both pressing threats in Europe and longer-term challenges, for example, from China. The conflict and instability in the Middle East could be escalating into a major war, contingencies with respect to Taiwan and the Korean Peninsula, the growing risk of hybrid attacks, challenges in the new domains of space and cyberspace, and the potential and recurrence of international terrorism. All this has to be on the menu of the SDR. But of course, my Lords, this is an important point. The post-Cold War reviews have focused on threats and risks that are immediate, occupying our minds right now, devising headline policies right now. But then things change quickly. And look at the example of the refreshment of the Integrated Review and Defence Command paper within 2 years of its publication after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. That's an example. So we've got to bear this in mind, that we've got to be long-term thinking but also ready to adapt. And the UK and other Western governments have struggled to find the right balance of cooperation, competition and confrontation with regard to China. And then you've got this balance between the Euro-Atlantic side of things and the Indo-Pacific side of things. And of course, striking the right balance between short-term and long-term. Space is a strong candidate. We need additional expenditure on space in the SDR, collaboration with India, which is doing great initiatives in space, and of course the scope of the Global Combat Air Programme, given that Typhoon should serve well, perhaps for another 2 decades, as long as it has the latest weapons and sensors, and the lessons learned from Ukraine and the Middle East should inform the judgments for our wider capabilities. My Lords, I'm a proud member as an honorary group captain of the RAF and 601 Squadron. I'm co-chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on India. And I think it's very, very important that the SDR needs to look at how are we going to work closer with India. India, the fastest growing major economy in the world. By 2060, I predict it will be the largest economy in the world. Are we doing enough joint exercises? I was delighted last year that the RAF and the IAF had Operation Cobra Warrior, a very good joint exercise. Our staff colleges. My father was commandant, my late father, General Bilimoria, of the Staff College in India, exchange of officers, RCDS, NDC in India, exchanges. We used to have an Indian Army liaison officer from the Indian Army posted in the UK within the British Army. My father held that post as a Lieutenant Colonel. That post doesn't exist anymore. That trust needs to be rebuilt. And with Quad, the Indo-Pacific alliance between USA, Japan, Australia and India, I think the UK should join and make it Quad Plus. So, my lords, we are at the top table of the world. We are UN Security Council permanent member. We are NATO, second biggest power in NATO, AUKUS, Five Eyes, G7, G8, sadly not the EU anymore. We have the finest and most respected armed forces in the world, something we as a nation should be immensely proud of. But here's the but. Our spending on defence, as has been pointed out earlier, in real terms was higher in 2010 at £57 billion than it is today at £54 billion. And then in 2010, there was a golden era of China. There was no threat of Ukraine. There was no Middle East confrontation that we have today. We are spending too little. Our full-time armed forces, 192,760 in total. Army, Navy and Air Force combined. My father's army, the Central Army in India, was 350,000. Future reserves, 29,000 reserves. This is not good enough. And it shouldn't be assumed, this is my final point, that the trajectory of this review, we're going to have a budget now in October, we're going to have a new American president. What is the new American president's approach going to be to Ukraine, going to be to NATO? What is the central planning scenario? What if the war in Ukraine continues and we need to spend substantially more? We need to be flexible and we need to think of that. It'll be too late by the time we report in the spring of next year. And finally, my lords, the noble Lord and gallant Lord Stirrup said, we have a shrinking and hollowing out of our armed forces. And the noble Lord West said, money is the elephant in the room. My lords, the price of freedom is not free.